So I wanted to make a few different types of videos and kind of show you what I do. It's late in the evening and I just got an email from Byron. It says, "I really appreciate the way you deliver your training methods about pumps, water, or lack of, and switches. My new pump replacement following your instructions worked great. Now I have a new issue. The air pressure is building up in the tank from 28 psi to over 70 to 80 pounds when the pump is running. It started 2 days ago after washing a truck. The water just ran out to a dribble. So I checked the switch, air tank pressure with the tire gauge, which capped at 60. Okay. I had to let out a considerable amount of air. A considerable amount of air tank twice. Finally, I got the air down to 28 psi. With the power off, spigot open, reset air in tank to 28 psi. Turned on power, got a little water going, but came to a trickle. Turned power off, checked tank air pressure, and it was still back up over 50. What would cause tank to build air pressure? I am not pumping air into the tank with an air compressor. Thanks for your help and advice." Okay, Byron, here's how this works. You have your storage vessel, which is your tank. Only the bottom 1/3 of the tank contains the bladder. The other 2/3 of the tank is filled with pressurized air. So when the pump kicks on and the bladder inside of the tank begins to swell, then the cavity above the bladder becomes less. So the air that's trapped inside becomes a higher pressure because it's essentially shrinking it because the bladder's swelling against it. So you can only set a tank when it is empty of water. There's no sense in you checking the air pressure in the tank when there's water on the system. Of course it's going to have more air, because now you had a deflated bladder and the tank had 28 pounds of air in it. When the tank is full of water, now it's got 7 gallons of water trapped in the bladder, and the air in the upper section of it is going to be under more pressure. Now, I don't know what the pressure could be or what it could increase to, but it sounds to me like maybe you have a pressure switch problem. I'm assuming you say 28 psi because you have a 30-50 switch. So what I would do in this situation, I would go buy a 40-60 switch, and then I would adjust your air pressure in your tank to 35 psi. Instead of 2 psi below the cut-on number, try 5 psi below the cut-on number. Sometimes the little nipple below the switch gets clogged up, and if you cannot allow the water pressure inside of the pipe to actually reach the switch because the little nipple's plugged, then the pump won't know when to shut off, and the pump also will not know when to cut on. So I would remove the switch and clean the nipple out if it's plugged, which you probably have a 50-50 shot of the nipple being plugged with what you're talking about, because you say that the system runs completely out of water. Now, if you have a 30-50 switch and your tank, and I know this because I have to do it every day, tanks come pre-charged with a decal that says 38 psi. But every tank I've ever seen comes pre-charged with like 40.5 psi. So every single time I open up a new tank, I have to let air out of that tank. So I see you have replaced the pump, but you probably didn't replace the tank. So maybe the tank has a hole in it. Maybe the bladder's got a hole in it. I'm not sure. The only way you can tell if the bladder has a hole in it is when it is empty of water, when the system is off and all the water pressure is drained out. Try to move the tank. Tip it side to side. If it's extremely light and easy to move, the tank's still good. If you can move it side to side and you hear water sloshing inside of the tank, tank's bad. There should be no water trapped inside of the tank, no matter what. If there's still water trapped inside of there, air pressure is on 0, then tank's bad. If there's water trapped on the upper portion of the bladder where only air pressure should be, bladder's bad, because water has found a pinhole and moved to the top. I have seen instances where water will leak out of the bladder. When the bladder is in like its swollen state, it won't leak, but when it goes down and it deflates, the edge over here will be a pinhole, and it'll allow water to escape. When the pump kicks back on and swells it up again, it seals the pinhole against the metal wall of the tank. So I have seen that before. Those are really tricky, hard to understand, but I've been doing it for 17 years. So I always do the knock test. If the tank rings like a bell, it's probably good. Then I'll go to the lean test. If I can tip it, I know it's good. And then I get my air, like my tire air digital gauge, check the top of it, see how much air is in it. So I'm gonna say you have either a faulty switch or a plugged up nipple. Look forward to hearing from you in the comments to see what it was. So this message is from Julie. Since I put a new bladder tank on my well system, I lost water pressure at times during use. I did not replace the pressure switch when I put on the new tank. Could this be the problem? Please advise. Thank you. Now this message was from a few days ago, and this is what I answered her at 11:48 a.m. I said, if it randomly stops but starts again after a few seconds, the issue is probably too much air in the tank. You simply need to press the top air valve for about 10 to 15 seconds normally. Turn the system off and drain the water to 0. You need to look at the switch cover and find out what the on PSI number is. If it says 30 PSI on, then your tank needs to be set between 25 and 28 PSI. If it says on at 40, then the tank needs to be set at 35 to 38 PSI. So whatever your on number is, the air pressure in your tank needs to be a little bit below that. But you cannot have any water pressure in your tank when that happens. This is very common for people who have a bladder issue and their tank fails, and then they go buy a new tank. Now, common rule of thumb in today's times is a 40-60 switch. That's normal. 15, 20 years ago, a 30-50 switch was normal. So a lot of people with older systems from the 90s, early 2000s will have 30-50 switches. And if they go buy a new tank, the tank's going to come pre-charged with somewhere between like 38 and 42 pounds of pressure in it. So this is very important that you need to know how to set the air pressure in your tank before you turn your system on. I have noticed in the last 2 years that the quality control for even American-made products have really gone downhill, and it's kind of sad. But essentially, the way a pressure switch works is it's just a lever and a diaphragm underneath it, and it pushes the water pressure, pushes up on it. Well, over here is basically a stem with a spring, and that spring has a nut. And if you tighten that nut, you can actually get more water pressure out of your system. But what ends up happening is that nut and that spring are supposed to be set from the factory to perfection. They're supposed to be set spot on at 40 PSI. I have gotten maybe a half a dozen out of, say, 100 that are set to like 36 PSI. And that will throw a system off, because if it cuts on at 36 PSI, but it says to have the pressure in the tank 2 PSI below the cut on, it's not going to work right. It's going to do exactly what Julie said. The water runs out, and then like magic, a few seconds later, it kicks right back on. So that's a very, very common thing. Too much air in the tank will cause that issue. But good question, Julie. Thanks for reaching out to me. I'm glad I could answer you. I hope you don't mind to use you on film, but I don't want to say anybody's last names. But I hope you enjoy this content. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section below. I have loads of emails recently from people all over the world. Another one from Africa. So if that was actually from a well driller who's reaching out to me to actually get expert advice on a well. So if you like these videos, let me know in the comment section, and I'll be sure to post that one next. But I want to see how this goes and see how it is. So thank y'all for watching. Have a good one.